Joining us, co-host of The Weekend and MS Now Washington reporter Jackie Alemany, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin is also with us. He is the author of the new book, Saving Democratic Foreign Policy, and co-host of MS Now's The Weeknight and former RNC Chairman Michael Steele, Punchbowl News co-founder, and MS Now political contributor Jake Sherman is with us as well. There's a lot to go on there, but just heading into this meeting with Xi, I said he's not in the strongest position he can possibly be in, that Americans can be in a meeting with our greatest geopolitical rival. Help me understand why it matters, Joel.
Well, Katie, President Trump is going to Beijing with hat in hand. He's protesting a lot right now before he heads out, but he really does need China as an ally because, as you laid out earlier, we don't have allies right now in our current war. And we've pushed our allies away in Europe as well, going back to the Greenland fiasco of a few months ago. And, of course, add to that the tariffs, which have pushed away basically all goodwill from abroad towards the United States. So he now needs to go to China and essentially beg for some wins. He needs them to open up their markets. He needs to, and I'm sure he will talk about needing to get investment into the United States, which that'll be controversial. And then the big one right now is he needs to get China to support an end to the war by leaning into Iran to open up the Straits of Hormuz. And he's in an incredibly weak position. The leverage is not there for the United States heading into this, which is a very strange dynamic for an American president to travel abroad going in with a weak hand.
Yeah, so Jackie, Michael just hit the head on the nail on the head. I can imagine a situation where the president saying, I don't think about Americans' financial situation is cut and replayed over and over again in campaign ads across this country as Americans are paying a lot more for gas. By the way, energy costs up 17.9%, nearly 18%. Inflation, 3.8%. That's the worst it's been since May 23. The president tried to say that inflation was only 1.7% before the war. That's not true. It was 2.4%. It's been going in the wrong direction ever since he took office. So is that accurate? Does this White House not think about Americans' financial situation when they're considering what to do with this war?
I'm not sure that is the implication here, Katie, but there's certainly a disconnect between what Donald Trump's staffers are urging him behind closed doors to message and what the president himself is messaging, unable to acknowledge any sort of economic empathy here and take stock of the reality of not just the policy implications of the war in Iran, but some of the policy aftershocks of other policy actions he's taken even prior to the war that had caused some of these macroeconomic markers to decline for him. But that soundbite from Donald Trump just adds to the list of tone-deaf bites that we've heard from top Trump administration staffers throughout the past few weeks. People like NEC Director Kevin Hassett, whose main job is tasked with being concerned about the financial welfare of Americans, who said that it is a good sign that Americans are doing record spending on their credit cards, racking up credit card debt to an all-time high. The president also said during that extended press gaggle there before he went to China that gas prices were going to bounce right back, that this was going to be a blip, something that people didn't even remember. And while you have a handful of economists who say that may be true, the overwhelming majority of them say that is not true, that there are going to be huge global economic aftershocks here that are impacting not just gas, but things like fertilizer, the cost of tomatoes in supermarkets. Really, you can find tons of consumer products that are soon going to be absorbing the shock of this. And that is why there is even more pressure on Trump going to China right now to extract a real concession from China, to apply more pressure on Iran to come to the negotiating table.
Just remember what happened to tariffs a few months ago and the soybeans and what the farmers were going through. I mean, it has been a disruptive, last year, it has been a disruptive year and a half since Donald Trump took office. This administration, from Pete Hegseth to the president, have both of them have said over and over again, and Republicans on the Hill as well, Jake, that Americans are okay with this bargain, higher costs right now in exchange for a less dangerous Iran. And again, the president's full quote was, I don't think about American financial situation at all. I don't think about anybody. I only think about one thing, and that's getting nukes away from Iran. It doesn't. From the negotiations and from the current standing on this war, getting nukes away from Iran is still a long way off. We're in a ceasefire right now. Iran still has nukes. And there has been no compromise made between the Americans and Iran regarding their nukes. Iran keeps rejecting the deals that we put forward, which, by the way, are only putting a stall on enrichment for 20 years, which is a different line than what the president is conveying to the American public. That's a negotiation behind the scenes. There was an important hearing today with Pete Hegseth regarding the war and the budget for next year. How are lawmakers feeling about this right now? Because we saw not just Democrats, but a lot of Republicans really pressing him in the Senate today.
I don't think there could be any situation where Americans are okay with higher gas prices for an extended period of time. And forget what Trump says. Look at what he's doing. He has proposed now a gas tax holiday. The federal government has an 18.4 cent tax on each gallon of gas. The president is saying we need to pause that for the time being to help artificially lower gas prices. Of course, there's implications if he does that with highway funding and a whole host of other priorities that use that tax, use the revenue for that tax. But I've not found anybody, maybe outside the leadership, which just says whatever, Trump wants them to say, I haven't really found anybody who's saying, yeah, we're cool with higher gas prices 170 days from Election Day. I just don't. And by the way, that binary, no nuke in exchange for higher gas prices, as you said, is like not even a guarantee. Yeah. So I'm not even really sure what he thinks the politics are here, because they're not that, right? I mean, and by the way, and I think Jackie said this too, there is no guarantee if the hostilities stop that we're going to see a drop in gas prices. There's no guarantee of that. So,
Saudi Aramco was saying that it's not until 27, and all the gas analysts have said that it takes a long time for this to cycle through the system for it to come back down. It's not going to be immediate, as the president keeps saying over and over again. And by the way, it's not just you saying, I don't think anyone wants to make that bargain. The American public is saying that through polling over and over again regarding this war.
They're against the war.
Yeah. And then let me ask you about just more on a more pointed question about Republicans on the Hill. You've got a lot of China hawks, a lot of Iran hawks. Are they comfortable with the president going to China right now? Do they feel like he's in a strong place?
Well, those are two different questions. I think that a lot of even China hawks will say that engagement is good and he should go and he should, it could help achieve the policy ends that he's seeking to achieve. That's number one. Number two, the second question is he strong? I mean, China is not a stupid nation, right? They see what his domestic political standing looks like, and they know he's not up for re-election. I don't know how they consume that or how they absorb that, but he's at 30% approval ratings. And his party is, and whether it happens or not, I don't know, but widely seen as unlikely to keep the majority in the House and possibly the Senate. So there it is, 35% approval rating. So that's the president that China is going to deal with, for better or worse. And by the way, this is not a novel concept, right? Obama had bad approval ratings at certain points. Yeah. So did Biden. So did Bush. All those, they all did.
Yeah, but the implication from the analysis on China was more direct than that. It was that they enjoy Donald Trump as president. They want Donald Trump as president because he is weakening America. They did not want Joe Biden as president because Joe Biden was harder for them to manage and to deal with. They see what Donald Trump is doing to this country and the division and the discord and the dysfunction that you have to try to make sense of every day on Capitol Hill. And they see that as furthering the end that they want, which is a decline in us as a superpower.
Yes, the answer to that is yes. I mean, that is true. That is what they want. They do not have elections as we know it. Their political system is very different. They can afford to play the long game to an extent that we cannot, right? Because they don't have immediate political implications. And absolutely, that is right.